Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dabo Swinney, the Clemson Tigers, adding a massive piece to what was already a very, very good 2026 class. Four-star edge rusher Dre Quinn from the state of Georgia committing to Clemson. Kind of a heavy hitter recruitment here. Clemson, Texas coming down to the wire. Dabo Swinney, the Clemson Tigers, getting this one done. Two things I love about this commitment. One, the player. It's a dang good looking prospect. You turn on the film from this kid like that. That's what I want my power forward defensive lineman to look like. But secondly, really important conversation to have for Clemson. They needed to hit on a guy like Dre Quinn because you look at this Clemson defensive line in 2025 is going to be elite. We've been banging the table for that sucker all summer long. TJ Parker potential to the NFL draft, Peter Woods probably to the NFL draft, DeMonte Capar to the NFL draft, maybe even a guy like Will Held. Wanted to replenish the young talent in that defensive line room. You're doing that here with a kid like Dre Quinn. Really excited to get into the player Dre Quinn, but I also want to talk about some other things regarding this Clemson program and some roster building conversations before we get into it. As always, to the Clemson fans, appreciate you guys. It's been a really fun team to talk about over the last couple of months, specifically on the recruiting trail. The amount of support y'all have shown the boys been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. I know you're a big fan of Dre Quinn too, so I'll give you the T-box here. Dre Quinn to Clemson, beating out Texas, shoving them in a locker. How are we feeling about it?
And you said it. There are some traits you absolutely love about what he has. And it really does start with length and then a good, twitchy athlete for being long. I feel like sometimes those longer defensive linemen are a little gawky, not as smooth the movers. Dre Quinn's a really, really good mover. And if he can add a little bit more physicality and power to his game, I think you got a really high upside player.
In a really unique kid, because you look at the frame and say, that's what I want my edge rushers to look at. And you turn on the high school film and say, he's playing a lot of 3-tech, a lot of 4A, a lot of stuff on the inside of the defensive line. It's a problem. It's a problem for opposing offensive linemen. I mean, his length and his first step in the twitch you mentioned, I don't know if there's a ton of versatility. I'd be surprised if Dre Quinn plays a ton on the inside, but he fully displays the length and the twitch that is going to give offensive linemen some problems, whether he's rushing off the edge, whether he's playing on the inside. And I'm kind of interested to see where this body takes him, because it looks like that body can fill out really damn quick for Dre Quinn. I'll say another thing that I think I've been really impressed with Clemson is, this is going to be a really good recruiting class, comfortably going to be a top 8 recruiting class in the country, at the very least top 10. Their ability to sign these kind of classes, I think people had some doubt, especially after the 2025 cycle where it left a little bit to be desired. Their ability to show the country that they can sign these kind of classes, but at the same time have a lot of resources in the NIL department to make sure they are maintaining their football players on their roster. It's been impressive because, Dabo Swinney's been vocal. A lot of the resources we have financially are going to be retaining the guys like Peter Woods and a guy like TJ Parker, TJ Moore, Brian West, go on and on. Their ability to retain all that talent, almost never lose difference makers to the transfer portal, and at the same time sign this kind of class. That's what you want to see if you're a Clemson fan in terms of roster building conversations.
It really is a powerful combo because, again, a lot of teams really do struggle, especially maintaining depth. And that's the thing that, again, you don't see a ton of Georgia's top line starters leave, ton of Ohio State's top line starters leave, but their guys do get antsy when they're into their second year and they're not playing a ton. You do start to get that feeling that those other, or a lot of, I'm not just pointing out Ohio State and Georgia, everyone in the country to really struggle. A guy like Jaheim Lawson, if he's not on Clemson, he's very antsy, I'd imagine. He's a really good player. I think a lot of people think he can be an NFL player. Not going to be a starter for Clemson this year, but is willing to stick it out at Clemson. And that's just not happening at these other schools.
I'll throw a few more out there, and this is just straight off the dome right here. I think about a guy like Vic Burley, who's struggled with some injuries. We know his capability, but hasn't got a ton of opportunity because of how good these defensive lines has been. The fact that he's on this roster going into year 3, if he's on another football team across the country, he's probably transferring out. What about a guy like Jamal Anderson, too? He's behind some of the best linebackers in the country. We think he's really good. sticking it out at Clemson. Their ability to maintain their depth, really, really impressive. And Dill, you look at this 2026 cycle, love what they've done along the lines of scrimmage. And Dill, that was another position where it's like, hey, Clemson needs to add some bodies, because you look at the guys that have been stalwarts for Clemson on the offensive line. We expect it to be a very good unit in 2025, but after the 2025 year, a lot of those guys that have played a lot of football for Clemson probably going to be making their ways to playing on Sunday, signing a really good offensive line class, headlined by guys like Leo Delaney and Chancellor Barkley, who I think both can play really relatively early, and then getting it going on the defensive line. You kind of love how Clemson has prioritized the right positions to make sure they hit hard in 2026.
But that's been something they've always been able to do at the high level. Like when they need to get guys who are going to play early, like they wanted TJ Parker and Peter Woods. I think Clemson knew they wanted some difference makers in the D line. In that cycle, they'll go out and get those type of guys. You said it, like this offensive line, I imagine these guys are going to be playing as at least true sophomores, if not a couple of them maybe being at least depth guys in their true freshman seasons, and they're going to need to be ready to go. This is an offensive line class that clearly has 3 to 4 guys who can
I really do. They took some flyers on some guys like Adam Guthrie, who I think probably needs 2 or 3 years before he's ready. Then you also grab guys like Leo Delaney and Chancellor Barkley and a guy like Graham Weiss or a guy like Carter Scruggs. I look at all those guys and say, wouldn't be surprised if they're in the 2 deep as true freshmen and probably starting for this football team as true sophomores. You got some other young talent, Elijah Thurman or a guy like Braden Jacobs, who Braden Jacobs sounds like he's going to be a guy for Clemson, and it might be relatively soon. The last name, there's really 2 big names, right? Tyler Atkinson at linebacker, which I sneaky kind of feels similar to the Sammy Brown one, where I think everybody's like, oh, yeah, 5-star backer from Georgia. He's going to Georgia. And then Clemson kind of pulls the stunner and grabs Sammy Brown. I know the crystal balls and the predictions aren't pointing towards Tyler Atkinson coming to Clemson. Would not be surprised if they get that one done. Here's the other name, and I think it's a massive target. I think Clemson leads Bryce Perry Wright. And talk, about another guy that's probably ready to come in and contribute in the 2 deep immediately. It's Bryce Perry Wright. I think if you're a Clemson fan and you got one more guy to go out and close the deal on, it's probably Bryce Perry right here.
Because that's another position that, you're probably going to lose a couple of really good defensive linemen like we just mentioned. So, again, like having a guy on the inside now probably more likely in what Bryce Perry Wright's going to be to come in and be able to be an effective player early. That's going to be an important one, I'd imagine.
Bryce Perry Wright fascinates me. I could cook on him all day long. I don't know what he's going to do because, Dill, I look at him and say, I don't know how much bigger he can get. Well, everybody said the same thing about Peter Woods. Peter Woods is now 315, and he carries that weight exceptionally well. I'm not saying Bryce Perry Wright is Peter Woods, but it kind of does remind you of like a little bit of a shorter, stockier defensive lineman that can be versatile, that's got a lot of power in his hands, that's a really good athlete. If you're Clemson, you're probably selling, hey, you're a guy that can play early. We go and play you early, and you're going to have the opportunity to play early as well. Like it. I like it a lot. Again, you were nervous about Dabo Swinney's ability to consistently sign top 10 classes with this new landscape. And Dabo Swinney's telling everybody to kick rocks because he's doing a really good job. And Dill, at the same time, he's retaining all his talent too.
His method's working. I know Josh Pate gets up there and says, oh, games passed him by. Every other media type figure, it feels like, gets up there and says, oh, they didn't sign a great class in 25 games passed them by. It's like, again, Dabo Swinney, I think, is going to figure it out. He is a good enough coach where I don't really worry about it. And he is kind of like this. I think this was, though, a big class for him to put a really good face on and like keep the momentum that Clemson's kind of built up over the course of his career.
Yeah, and Dill, what happens if this team goes out and, let's be real, they can win what happens if they go win a national championship in 2025 and put 10-plus guys to the NFL draft? And you start counting the guys that are going to be selected in the NFL draft on this roster, it's going to be double digits. We'll see how Clemson can close in 2026 as well. And Dill, I'm not going to get on. Like, look, did I have some question marks about Dabo Swinney and the future of Clemson? Yeah, absolutely. And Dabo Swinney, you give him so much credit for just saying, like, hey, I believe in my process. There's going to be a lot of outside noise about my process, but I'm going to stick to it. It's paying off. Let's just be very frank about it. All right, we'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Been a blast to talk about this team. Going to continue to be a blast talking about this team over the next couple of months. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.